Thank you, guys. Thank you. You can be seated. Oh, it's so good to be here with my Centrepoint family. If you don't know me, my name's Shane. I'm a part of the Centrepoint family, and have been for since 2018 was the first time I came by, and I look forward to these days. And tomorrow night we have the School of Ministry. We'll be doing that. I'm looking forward to that. A couple things before we get going. When they bring me in, they want me to open the Bible, and I take that really seriously. And anytime I do that, I want Jesus to get bigger, the cross to work better, the resurrection to be central, and scriptures to get bigger, not smaller. I hope that's going to be your experience here, as well as in our Centrepoint family around Perth. After this is over, I do have a small resource table, if you're here live at Bibra Lake, with some of our teaching resources on it. Now, we've changed that around. This is really cool. We don't have hard copy USBs anymore. We have preloaded download cards. And so which has a couple of meanings to it. One, this is really cool. For the first time ever, you have full access to the entire library, not just what I have with me. And so if you buy one, you get one. You buy two, you get two. But you have this incredible selection that you wouldn't have had otherwise. The second thing is for the first time ever, I'm able to charge Australian dollars and give you US dollar credit, right? Which means everything out there's 36% off. Now, if you're wondering why we do that, we do it for two reasons. One is we want to resource people well. We don't want your primary theological education coming from TikTok and Reels. It's not good. It creates a culture of ultra-crepidarians, which is a real word. You can look it up. It's C-R-E-P, not C-R-A-P, ultra-crepidarian. And an ultra-crepidarian is someone who spouts off confidently about things they're not qualified to speak on. And we all know a few of those. So we want to resource people. The second reason, the main reason is that we take Matthew 25 very seriously. Matthew 25 is when Jesus said, what you did to the least of these, you did it to me. Now, however seriously you want to take that, I don't mind. It's between you and God. But at the very least, if the person who died for us is telling us what's important to him, it should at very least be important to us, right? And so we use the profit from that to help us fund our main mission in the world, which are 3 children's homes in China that look after children with disabilities, 2 in Hinyang, 1 in Changsha. We give them a regular monthly amount, and then 3 or 4 times a year we get to pay for surgeries that are life-saving. One life-saving surgery we got to pay for was a kid was born with hydroencephalitis. And I'm not a doctor, but evidently that's water on the brain, and it's very critical that you get some sort of drain in pretty quickly. And we were able to pay for the brain surgery that saved his life. The most recent one, we had a kid born with hip dysplasia, and we were able to pay the surgery for that. That's not life-saving literally, but it kind of is. I mean, if you were going to be crippled and then you're not, it's just a better life, for sure. And so what I'm asking you to do is come out. Let me put something in your hands that will change the way you look at God. You put something in our hands that helps us feed, clothe, shelter, educate children with disabilities. I think that's a pretty good trade. The only thing I would ask is that if you don't want anything, God bless. I'll see you tonight. If you do want something, if you would come by in the first, 10 minutes, that'd be amazing. The reason is I've been here enough. This church has a real chatting afterwards culture. And I think that's awesome. But it's better than not liking one another. But if you don't want anything, chat away. But if you want something, if you would buy first and chat second, that would be awesome. Because what that'll do is that'll let me eat before I have to come back, right? And that's fantastic. The other thing is I'd like to give everybody an invitation back to tonight. If you're within driving distance of Bibra Lake, if you consider coming by tonight. I always put the most special thing aside for the evening. The reason is because the people who come in the evening, they just come anyway, and then I can invite everybody in the morning back. I've got something very special set aside tonight. And if you come tonight and it doesn't change your life, I'll personally, out of my own pocket, I'll pay you back for whatever they charge you to come. So whatever that is. So it's a totally risk-free thing. And here's the thing. Here's the thing. Centrepoint does this so good. They put the service time at 5. Now, what that means is that it's safe even if you're over 40, okay? Because I'm 49, and we don't do things outside after 7, okay? So if things are going to go past 7, we ain't coming, all right? But tonight be over at 6:15, which means everybody, even those over 40, will be home by 7, right? So it's safe for all of us. It's really good. So come on by tonight. All right, so let's get into the scriptures. I just really asked 2 questions when I opened the Bible, like what happened, and more importantly, what's happening in me right now because of what happened. I want to talk to you today about how to handle regret. Now, everybody should perk up with that one because that applies to everybody. Like all of us have things that we hope to God never end up on the internet. All of us have things that if we had a do-over, we'd take it, but we don't. People sometimes treat us like we had a do-over, but we didn't. It's that. All of us have struggle when we meet a new group of people. And then you go, how much of my story do I actually tell? But because if they find out later, they might think I'm lying. But I'm not lying. It's just none of their business. It was 12 years ago, and that was 12 Shanes ago as well. Like I've shifted since then. And I don't want you characterizing me by my worst day, right? That. Oh, we all have that. And the question is, and it's an age-old question, what do we do with it? Thank God we don't live in ancient Sumerian culture. In ancient Sumerian culture, if you had regrets and they thought you'd offended the gods, you had to cut yourself until it got better. Well, the problem is they didn't know how many cuts, so they just said, just cut till it rained. Well, they lived in Iraq. Like their arms would be falling off. We've evolved past that now, but not really. Just in some practice. In the 1500s, there was a monk that wrote in his diary, I prayed on my knees on stone floors until they bled. Which leads to this question. What kind of God do we believe in that would delight in us inflicting pain on ourselves just so he could be who he is? That doesn't make any sense. As if our lack of faithfulness ever compromises God's faithfulness. That doesn't work. That would put us in a bad situation. So the Bible has a lot to say about this. But the earliest solution to this might still be the best starting point. So the earliest solution to this was, here's what they did. If you're not indoctrinated at all or initiated at all into Jesus's world and the way they thought, here's what they did. They set aside one day a year. That day, if you're a nerd, need to know the name of the day. The day was called Yom Kippur, okay? Yom is day, Kippur, atonement. It was the Day of Atonement, all right? And it was the holiest day of the year. It was the only day where the command was Shabbat Shabbaton, absolutely no work. In other words, no one is allowed to do anything for 24 hours. And here's the reason why. Because the day God forgives all sins everywhere, you can't have people doing anything. And the reason why is because if you allow people to do anything, somebody's going to say it's because of what they did that God forgave, right? It's because we prayed our prayer or did our ritual or whatever. So God just handles it by saying, no one's allowed to do anything. That way no one can claim that it's their ritual that dictates how faithful God can be for who he is, right? Because true strength is this. No matter how you treat me, it won't motivate me to act outside of who I am, right? That's one of the points of the cross, is no matter how you treat, the cross is not the power to kill. The cross is the power to love the killer, because morality is not a function of behaviors we force on others. Morality is a function of how we love others, okay? So this day was set aside, and essentially, if I could use a caricature, if a bucket is an illustration, is everybody shows up with your bucket of regrets, and then on this day, everybody gets a new bucket. Right? And the idea is you can't carry this year's regrets into next year, or next year you'll have 2 buckets. And if you do it again, you'll need 3. And then and the principle is if we don't have a regular ritual by which we let it go for ourselves and let it go for them, our life just frankly gets too heavy to carry around. And so now a later writer, this was once a year, a later writer said, actually God's mercy is new every morning. So if you want to know what God's actually like, the thing that happened at Yom Kippur, it's happening every morning. And then Jesus comes along and he's like, actually, I forgive 70 times 7 for the same sin in the same day. So if you can't go with Jesus because that's too nice, that's fine. At least go back to forgiving yourself and others once a day. And if you can't do that, at least once a week. And if you can't do that, at least once a month. And if you can't do that, at least once a year. And if your concept of God is meaner than Leviticus, it's probably time for us to change, right? And so this is something I've put into my life. It's really helped me. Before I go to sleep, I have a moment of honesty where I'm honest with God about my failures that week. And I feel it be released into the arms of the faithful Christ. But I'm also honest about where people hurt me that week. And I do my best to release that. And what that does is it just means that I don't carry last week's regrets and pain into next week, right? And it's however you do it, it doesn't matter. It's the fact that we do it. And so I want to walk you through this day. By the way, this day happened last week, so we're right in that season, and it was a quite a literal metaphor. Like it was a metaphor that was based on something literal, a literal metaphor. It was a metaphor based on something literal. Like this was the time of year where their agricultural ground was plowed up and ready for new planting, and so essentially what they said is what's true of your field can be true of your heart. So whatever seeds you plant in your field, that's what you're going to harvest in June, right? So if you sow seeds of anger, you're going to reap a harvest of bitterness. If you sow seeds of cynicism, you're going to reap a harvest of doubt, right? So and you get a chance, just like you do with your ground, to sow new seeds. But to sow new seeds, we need a fresh piece of ground. And so Yom Kippur was that fresh piece of ground. Now, my goal today is 4. 1, I want to equip you on how to handle regrets. 2, I want us to be equipped on how to handle other people's regrets, because there's a reciprocal relationship with how much mercy we show others to how much mercy we can receive ourselves, right? 3rd, I want Jesus to get bigger than you've ever imagined. And 4th, I want us to understand the power of celebration, all in 26 minutes. So, let's see how we go here. Here is the account of Yom Kippur in Leviticus 16. Here it is. You bring that slide up for me. This is how Aaron is to enter the most holy place. He must first bring a young bull for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. He is to put on the sacred linen tunic with linen undergarments next to his body. He is to tie the linen sash around it and put on the linen turban. Come on, somebody with some turban. Keep going. These are the sacred garments. So he must bathe himself with water before he puts them on. From the Israelite community, he is to take 2 goats for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. Keep going. Aaron is to offer the bull for his own sin offering to make atonement for himself and his household. He is to then take the 2 goats and present them before the Lord at the entrance to the tent of meeting. He is to cast lots for the 2 goats. 1 lot for the Lord and the other for the scapegoat. So this day centered around 2 goats, not 1. Next slide. The first goat was the goat for the Lord. Essentially, you have 2 goats, you cast lots. There's a goat, the goat for the Lord. And if you're a goat for the Lord, it's a bad day for you, right? But let's just admit together, if you're born a goat, it's just a bad day, period, right? But then there was the second goat. The second goat was the live goat that was presented before the people. And that goat's name was Azazel. Essentially, what was happening in this story is that there was a goat that handled everything in private. But people don't tend to believe things without them being shown in public. So the live goat showed everybody in public what the goat had handled in private. But by the way, that's how the New Testament writers framed Jesus, that Jesus did not inaugurate a new reality about God. He just simply showed you what God was always like from the beginning. 6 different places by 4 different authors, it says that Jesus was actually crucified before the foundation of the world. In other words, the cross of Jesus Christ did not change who God is. It just showed you what God was always like. Because God was like Jesus, exactly like Jesus. God had always been like Jesus. We did not know that, but now we do. Is the entire summary statement of the New Testament. Hebrews 4:3, his sacrificial work was completed before the foundation of the world. 1 John, we know that all these things have been true since before the foundation of the world, but now we've seen them with our own 2 eyes. Revelation 13, blessed are those whose names are found written in the book of the Lamb, slain before the foundation of the world. 1 Peter 1, he was crucified before the foundation of the world, but in these last days was made manifest so you could see it. Like this kind of idea. There was a goat on the inside, but then there was a goat on the outside. It's the most important word I'm going to teach you today. The goat for the outside, his name was Azazel, right? Now, in English, they translate that scapegoat, but there's not a real good English word with it. As a matter of fact, in the Afrikaans Bible, they just left it Azazel because there's not an equivalent Afrikaans word. In English, they tried to English it, by saying scapegoat, but the actual Hebrew word is Azazel. So I want us to try to say that with some gusto, okay? Some real energy, right? So this day centered around 2 goats. 1 goat for the Lord, and the other, his name was Azazel. Let's try that. Ready, go. Azazel. That's very good. Let's raise our energy 20% and try that again. Ready, go. Azazel. Perfect amount of energy. And Azazel means take him away. You can see where that's a translation issue. Like, he's to cast lots for the 2 goats. 1 lot for the Lord and the other for the take him away. Well, that doesn't make as much sense. It could also mean a weapon in the hand of the enemy. The idea is that whatever the enemy's using to beat you up, normally your own failure, we're going to take it away. We're going to remove that. By the way, this metaphor was so powerful, it made it into modern mythology. If you're an X-Men fan, one of the X-Men, his name is Azazel, spelled the exact same way. And Azazel's superpower is if he can grab you, he can take you away. He can make you disappear, right? So the idea is whatever failure is beating you up, oftentimes forgiving yourself is much harder than the other person forgiving you. We're going to remove that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through a brief Yom Kippur ceremony, and my goal is to show you that, but it's also to show you how the gospel writers, particularly Matthew, used a Yom Kippur ceremony to show the meaning of Jesus. So he took something the Jews understood, Yom Kippur, and he's like, okay, think about Jesus this way. What if Jesus is the day that everybody gets a fresh start, everybody gets a second chance, everybody gets a clean slate, everybody gets an opportunity to write a better story? So here is the account of the goat for the Lord. Next slide. Aaron shall bring the goat whose lot falls to the Lord and sacrifice it for a sin offering. But the goat chosen by Lot as the Azazel must be presented alive before the Lord to be used for making atonement by sending it into the desert as the Azazel. So first, the goat for the Lord is a 5-step ceremony. Next slide. So they would tie the goat down and they would lay hands on the goat. The priest was empowered to put all the sins onto the goat. So if everybody brought your bucket of regret, right? We're going to put it on this goat. Now, the Talmud says that the pressure of all the failure going on to this one goat would force the priest to turn his head. So the picture is this. Hold on a second. Matthew says that when the sins of the whole world was put on Jesus, that God the Father had to turn his head. This is Yom Kippur language. Like, the Jewish audience would have, wait, what? Is this the day God just lets it all go? Is this the day God chooses and refuses to play by a system of keeping score, but is screaming, you don't owe me anything? Is this that day? The next part of the ceremony was called the press. The priest would lay on the goat and squeeze. I think the issue was we really, really, really need to get the sins in the goat. And he would squeeze and the goat would, right? It would be that. Now the play on words is, the word press in Hebrew is Gethsemane. Gethsemane it means to press. Remember, Matthew said Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane. And remember his prayer? He said, Father, I'm pressed with the sins of the whole world. This is Yom Kippur language. Like, is this the day God just lets it all go? The next part of the ceremony was called It Is Finished. At exactly the 9th hour, the priest would proclaim in a loud voice, It is finished. And he would cut the goat's throat. The gospel writers say that exactly the 9th hour, Jesus proclaimed in a loud voice, It is finished. This is all Yom Kippur language. The priest would then catch the goat's blood in this cone-shaped cylinder, broad at the top, narrow at the bottom. And he would swirl it to keep it moving and alive. And he would walk from the altar to the Holy of Holies saying, don't touch me, I have not yet offered the blood of the sacrifice. Don't touch me, I have not yet offered the blood of the sacrifice. Hold on a second. The gospel writers say that after all these things, Jesus met 2 women in a garden, and he doesn't even say hello. What does he say? Don't touch me. This is all Yom Kippur language. This is all screaming at a Jewish audience. Is this the manifestation of the day God just lets it all go? That everybody gets a fresh start, everybody gets a second chance, everybody gets a clean slate? Is this the day God is screaming your lack of faithfulness for a whole year? Never compromise my faithfulness one time because I am who I am regardless of your response? Is this that day? The priest would then go into the Holy of Holies and he would sprinkle blood on the altar 7 times. Different message for a different day. 7 times. He would then come out a bloody mess and he would have to wash his hands and present them. Here's the reason why. They believed back then that if the priest survived this exercise, then it worked. And if he didn't survive it, you had to do it again. So can you imagine being the pressure of this, like the pressure on this guy walking into this holy thing, hoping that it worked. But you had to prove that it worked by presenting your hands for inspection, because they were superstitious back then and they believed in ghosts and things like this. And so the priest would they would inspect the priest's hands to say, no, that's him. He's flesh and blood. He survived it. Well, remember, the gospel writers say after all these things, Jesus met his disciples in an upper room. And what's the first thing he does? He presents his hands to be inspected. And remember what it says? They were terrified. You reckon? thinking they had seen a ghost, right? Well, of course, in their experience, dead people stayed dead. So if dead people don't stay dead, well, then if we're wrong about death, what else could we be right? It's disorientating, it's disruptive, and that's what's critical for growth. And Jesus goes, okay, if you won't inspect my hands, at least give me something to eat. I can prove it doesn't fall through. Like Jesus is doing bar tricks. So it's this idea. Now, the idea is that if the priest survives it, then it worked. And so there's this celebration. But what's true of human psychology is most people won't believe something unless they see something. And because they couldn't see something, this day centered around two goats. One goat for the Lord, and the other was with a lot of gusto. What was his name again? Everybody together? Azazel. And Azazel means take him away. Here is the account of the live goat. When Aaron is finished making atonement for the most holy place, the tent of meeting and the altar, he shall then bring forward the live goat. He is to lay both hands on the head of the live goat and confess over it all the wickedness and rebellion of the Israelites. All their sins. Now, I took the time and I went and looked that up in the original language, and the word all there is actually all. And so if all says all, let's leave all and let's quit making exceptions to all, because when we make exceptions to all, we run the risk of our sin not being in all. So when it says all, let's leave all because it says all. And it's quite frankly, it's just better if it's all. And it's a whole lot better if there's no exceptions to the word all, because if there's exceptions to the word all, we have to live with the pain and the grief and the anxiety of what if my sin doesn't count into the category of all. So the solution for that is to quit making exceptions to all for them, and then we'll quit making exceptions to all for us. Let's stop making exceptions to all. But Shaney's an addict. I know. There's a lot of pain in that. And I hope he can be empowered to change his life. I do. But his addiction does not preclude him from the faithfulness of Christ, because his lack of faithfulness doesn't compromise God's faithfulness. And but Shaney left his wife for another woman. I know. And there's a lot of pain in that. Trust me, he will regret that. Like a lot. But it's all, right? And because there's pain, and hopefully he can change his life, but his lack of faithfulness doesn't compromise God's faithfulness. Like all means all. So let's stop making exceptions to it, right? We'll keep going. And put them on the goat's head. So they should put, I'll tell you about that in a second. The goat will carry on itself all their sins to a solitary place. The man shall then release it into the desert. The man who releases the goat as the Azazel must wash his clothes and bathe himself with water. Afterwards, he may come into the camp. So this day centered around two goats. One goat for the Lord, and the other for Azazel, to take him away. Here's what they would do. Next slide. Is they would stand this live goat in front of everybody. He was a terrified live goat. He knows what just happened to his friend in there. It's a whole thing, right? He's standing in front, and they would They would lay next slide. They would lay hands on this goat. Like, everybody got your bucket of regret? Everybody got your bucket? We're going to put it on this goat. And the way they would symbolize it is they would wrap his head with a red wrapping, a scarlet woolen thread, a red cord. They would wrap his head, and they would say, "Behold, Israel, your sin." There it is. All your sins are on this one goat's head. They would then stand the goat in front of the people. Remember, the gospel writers say that as a part of Jesus' trial, Pilate had Jesus stood in front of the Jewish crowd, and he wrapped his head with thorns. Hold on. If you wrap someone's head with thorns, what color would the wrapping be? Red. This is all Yom Kippur language. They would then march the goat through the crowd and say, "Behold, Israel, your sin is being removed from you as far as the east is from the west. Behold, Israel, your sin is being removed from you as far as the east is from the west." There would be someone put in charge of releasing the goat into the desert. Remember, Jesus told Pilate, "You've been given charge over me by heaven." They would release this goat into the desert. And this is where Yom Kippur gets boring and awkward. Because, can you picture thousands of people and no one's allowed to do anything? Are you allowed to sing? No, because if you're allowed to sing, someone's going to say it's because we sang that God forgave. Are you allowed to shout? Nope. Because if you let people do anything, at some point someone will power up on their ritual and then monetize it, actually. So you can't let anybody do anything. They're not allowed to sing, shout, dance. Talking is questionable. Like, it would just be a little boring. And so because it takes a long time to release this goat. I've been to the place where they released the goat, and it would have taken a while. So what they started doing was instead of releasing it in the desert, they started just throwing it off the nearest cliff, right? The reason is expedience and efficiency. The other reason is that the Mishnah tells this great story that there was one Yom Kippur where 4 days after Yom Kippur, the goat found its way back home. And so everybody's sins returned. The weapon in the hand of the enemy came back, So they didn't want that happening again, so they started throwing it off a cliff. By the way, as a tangent, this is such a powerful metaphor, it made it into English metaphors. So in English metaphors, remember when you were a kid, if you did something dumb and your friends were taking the mickey out of you, your grandmother would tell you what? Hey, don't let them get your goat. Don't let them get your goat. The English metaphor, don't let them get your goat, the etymology is this. To get someone's goat is bringing up their failure. It's bringing up their regret. It's embarrassing them in public based on something they did in the past. That's getting someone's goat. It's bringing the goat back. If you got lost any of this, come out right now. It's really important. At Centrepoint Church, we are committed to being goat removers, not goat bringers. Okay? Because when you bring up someone's goat, you're actually becoming the weapon in the hand of the enemy that God's removed. And I don't think we want to do that. We want to be, so if you're sitting here today and you're wondering, I wonder if this is a place where I can get a fresh start, a second chance, a clean slate, an opportunity to write a better story. The answer is yes, because we're committed not to bring up goats. We're committed to reminding people their goat's been removed, right? Which is why every person within the sound of my voice should stop clicking on YouTube things that are dedicated to telling you about other people's failures. What is wrong with us? It is so grieving to me that the best theologian in the world, N.T. Wright, can do the most brilliant exegesis you've ever heard on Romans 4, and he'll get 1,100 views, but some dipstick with a microphone dedicating his whole channel to talking about the failure of others is actually getting 800,000 views. And that is on us. That is a plank in our eye. That they would stop doing it if we would stop clicking on it, because then they'd stop making money from it. We don't want to be goat bringers. We want to be goat removers. So you would, and then what would happen, the Talmud and the Mishnah talk about this, that every year on this day, a miracle would happen. The red cord, they would cut a piece of the red cord and hang it from the temple door, and that cord would turn white. It's mentioned in the Bible, in Isaiah, come now, let us reason together. Though your sins are like scarlet, they'll be made white as snow. That metaphor makes no sense unless you understand Yom Kippur. Like sins are red and purity is white. Like it's actually, that miracle would happen every year on that day. This cord would turn white. Now imagine with me the emotion of it. You imagine thousands of people not allowed to do anything, and the cord turns white. It was this sign from heaven that the whole thing worked. You've just gotten a confirmation that your bucket's empty. Your field has plowed, and you can choose to sow new seeds. You can get a fresh start, a clean slate. You can choose for next year's seeds to be different than last year's seeds, so you get a different harvest. This is like empowering. But they weren't allowed to do anything until Yom Kippur ended. And Yom Kippur ended with a very simple move. There was like a chair up where everybody could see. And when the priest noticed that the cord had turned white, he would back up to this chair, and he would sit down. And when the priest sat down, it was the indication to the people that everything had been done. Everything has been accomplished. Everybody gets a clean slate, fresh start, second chance, the opportunity to sow new seeds. And the Hebrew, I don't know what the Hebrew word is, but they would go nuts, right? They would scream and shout and dance and blow horns and this is really important. It wasn't raucous celebration to get God to act. It wasn't like, come on, if you do this longer and louder, God might act. Like, it's possible to be a fully devoted follower of Christ that prays like a prophet of Baal, right? It's like, it wasn't that. It was we're celebrating because God acted, not to get him to act. There's this one guy that attended a Yom Kippur thing, and he wrote down like his it'd be like if I went to Centrepoint, here's my testimony from the day. Next slide. Here's what he says. He then fastened a scarlet woolen thread to the head of the goat for Azazel. And laying his hands upon it again, he recited the following confession of sin and prayer for forgiveness. O Lord, I've acted with iniquities, trespasses, and sins before you. I, my household, the sons of Aaron, your holy ones. O Lord, forgive the iniquities, transgressions, and sins that I, my household, and Aaron's children, your holy people, committed before you. As it is written in the law of Moses, your servant, for on this day he will forgive you to cleanse you from all your sins before the Lord, and you will be clean. This was Yom Kippur. I want to bring it to Jesus. I want to test your knowledge of something. In the Christian tradition, we love Christmas and Easter. People tend to come be regrounded in those times. And Easter, if you're not at all familiar with the Christian tradition, the reason Easter is really important to us is because the Easter story kind of weaves itself through everybody's life. So everybody has a moment where they struggle, suffer, die, experience grief, and then we need Jesus to harrow hell and the grave and death on our behalf, and then there's a new life. There's a fresh start, right? So Easter at its most basic thing is although suffering, death, and grief get a word, it never gets the last word. The last word is hope, surprise, resurrection, awe, astonishment, amazement. Like it's that. And we need more of that and less despair. And so pastors love Easter, except for the fact that they only have one story to preach from. And if you pastor a church for 20 years and you only got one story to preach from once a year, well, there's all this pressure inside to come up with something different, you know? And so it could be, so what they do is a lot of times churches put on plays, dramas, let's watch a movie, right? Like everybody's seen The Passion of the Christ, right? Like once, right? You wouldn't watch it twice. That'd be like lunatic stuff, right? Because like Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ is like somebody just getting beat to death. It's hardly Friday night Netflix viewing, right? And here's what happens in every Passion play ever, and in every TV show that shows it is Pilate's in a conundrum. He doesn't want to hurt Jesus because he doesn't actually think he's guilty, but he doesn't want to riot because that would be bad for him because Caesar, it's the whole thing. So he does something. He just acquiesces and says, I'll let you decide. And they start chanting something. It's very famous. It's in all the movies. Everybody together, what do they chant? Crucify him, crucify him, crucify him. Here's the problem. That's not what they said. Check this out. This is John 19. Check this out. It was the day of preparation of Passover week, about the 6th hour. Here's your king, Pilate said to the Jews. But they shouted, take him away, crucify him. Hold on. If a Jewish crowd is chanting, take him away, what word are they saying? Azazel, Azazel, Azazel. Is this the day God just lets it all go? But remember in Leviticus, it says somebody has to be given charge over the Azazel. And then after he's done, he needs to wash his hands. Next slide. When Pilate saw he was getting nowhere, but instead an uproar was starting, he took water and he washed his hands in front of the crowd. But wait a minute. Yom Kippur ends when the priest sits. Here's Hebrews chapter 10. Next slide. Day after day, every priest stands and performs his religious duties. Again and again, he offers the same sacrifices, which could never take away sin. But when this priest has offered for all time one sacrifice for sin, he has now sat down. Which leads me to this question. Have we ever presented Jesus in such a way that makes Jesus stand back up? Like, Jesus, we know you did it all, but we really need people to do our prayer at our moment, at our time, with our ritual, just so we'll feel better. It's like, what? No, what? The good news is better than that. The good news is the priest is sitting. There's this guy named John, and he was one of Jesus' disciples, and he has this insight into Yom Kippur that I think is brilliant. Here's what he says. Next slide. Dear children, I love that, dear children. I write this to you so that you will not sin. Stop. The only appropriate response to the grace of God is to choose to live better. If you get a fresh field, sow new seeds. If you get a second chance, take it. If a teacher lets you retake an exam because you're having a bad day, write different answers. If you commit a crime and a lawyer gets you off, stop breaking the law. If you hit a bad shot and your golf partner says, hit another one, aim different, right? The only appropriate response to the grace of God is to be empowered to live better, right? Like, duh. Like, don't show up every year with the same exact bucket of regrets. Will God forgive you? Yeah. His faithfulness is not compromised by your lack of faithfulness. But your life will stink to high heaven, right? There's an opportunity in this kind of thing to go, you know what? I have harvested some pretty bad things, but I can now sow new seeds. Dear children, stop it. I love that. Dear children, I write this to you so you will not sin. But if anybody does, I love that. Dear children, I hope you don't. But if you do, and you will, we have one who speaks to the Father in our defense. Why? Because our lack of faithfulness never compromises his. Jesus Christ, the righteous one. He is the atoning, there's that Kippur word. He's the atoning sacrifice for our sins. Oh, and not just for our sins, but for the sins of the whole world. Dear children, I hope you don't. But if you do, and you will, you can know that Jesus' faithfulness is never compromised by your lack of it. Now, how do you summarize today? They say great teachers can summarize things in one sentence. I need four. And the musicians can start coming back up. Next slide. The hands have been washed. You say, but Shane, I committed a crime. I know. And I think prison would have been awful, and you paid your debt to society, and you're at Centrepoint now, and you're wondering, can I get a fresh start? And the thing is we would never justify the crime you committed, but we don't want the thing getting in your way to change your life to be the idea that your thing doesn't fit into the category of all. And we would encourage you to move forward, because the good news is better. The good news is better than that failure. The good news is the hands have been washed. Or maybe we say it this way, next slide. The cord has turned white. But Shane, I went through a divorce. I know, and there was so much pain in that. Dear children, I wish you wouldn't have. There's got to be a lot of pain in that. Yes, but it was my fault. I know it was your fault. I know the story, and there must be an awful thing. And here's the thing: she's already forgiven you, but you can't forgive yourself. It's a whole thing. But the good news is better than that failure. The good news is that the cord has turned white, and the thing we don't want you doing is repeating the problem. But we also don't want you being held back from changing your life, thinking that your sin doesn't count in the category of all. The good news is better than that. The good news is the cord has turned white. Or maybe we can say it this way. Next one, the priest has sat down. It's like, yeah, but Shane, I've got this porn addiction, and it's so free, and it's so accessible, and it's private, but you know what I'm starting to find? I'm starting to find that I feel lonelier when I engage in that, and objectifying a human being, even if it's on a screen, is starting to leak into other areas of my life. I'm starting to see people as objects instead of image bearers, and it's really, really bad. And I just can't seem to beat it. I know. Dear children, stop objectifying people. It's in your best interest to treat everyone as an image bearer and no one as an object. But the good news is better than that failure. The thing that could hold you back from not changing your life is the belief in despair that you're outside the scope of all. And the good news is better than that. The good news is the priest has sat down. But maybe the best way we can remember today is simply this. Next slide. Is the goat has left the building. Azazelvis has left the building. You say, Shane, but I know. Dear children, please change your life. But the good news is better than that failure. It's the goat has left. And maybe the goat hasn't left for you because you won't let the goat leave for someone else. You can't want mercy for yourself and justice for everybody else. That doesn't work. If the goat leaves the building for you, it leaves the building for them. You have a shame they're wrong about God. Yes, so are you. Everybody's wrong about God. Are you serious? Who's got God figured out? The smartest person in this room hasn't scratched 1/1000th of 1% of who God is. Wrong about God? You don't get to speak for God. Come on. And if we don't learn anything from Scripture, is there's forbearance. There's incredible patience as people learn more and more and more. I mean, and you're not the exception to that. If the goat leaves for you, it leaves for them. And if it leaves for them, it leaves for you. Now, I thought long and hard about, how do you end a day like today? How do you end this service? And there's two ways. One, and neither are wrong. I'm not mad at anybody. Two ways. One would be to have an altar call. And at the altar call, it would sound something like this. If you want to stop being weighed down with your regrets and failures, we want you to come up here. We're going to pray for you, and we're going to leave it at the foot of the faithfulness of Christ. And you're going to leave free, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. We're not going to do that because I just frankly don't want to deal with all the snot that is involved in that way of doing it. And it just, to me, it violates the spirit of Yom Kippur. The spirit of Yom Kippur is it ends with violent celebration, raucous celebration. Now, I have to be careful because you can't tell a room with white people in it to go nuts. They don't know what that means. White people can't go nuts. We dance with our shoulders. We're like, hey. It just all looks special and weird. And so you just can't do that to white people. You can't. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pick something that every culture from everywhere is comfortable with. And that's clapping on beat. Okay? So here, we stand up. This is our response time. So let me explain something about clapping real quick, okay? There's a way you can clap and it's mindless, like, right? But clapping in the ancient world meant corporate agreement. It was something that was supposed to rise up inside you. Like if I give you a high five, it means we agree. If I make a handshake agreement. And so what's going to happen here is faith is going to arise in this place. And the fear, the guilt, the shame, the pain, the divorce, the agony, the crime, you're not going to have to carry that one more day. You're going to feel that thing release off of you. It'll be a corporate thing that together we agree that the goat left for me, the goat leaves for you, and this thing will release us. Now, I realize you can't keep this going for longer than 30 seconds or so, and so we're going to, I get it. So what we're going to do is they've prepared just 30 seconds of a song. We're going to clap on beat. After that 30 seconds, instead of clapping, I'm going to get you to do this. That way I'm not screaming over you. And I'm going to declare something prophetically over you. And then I'm going to step off the stage and they can finish. But in that second part, if y'all draw back a little bit, because it could be hard to hear. All right, so here we go. Mr. Drummer, can you give me that beat?
What an amazing message. We hope that it blessed you. If you've made a decision for Christ today, please make sure to get in contact with the number on the screen. We would love to help you with your next steps.
And don't forget to follow us on all of our socials so you can stay up to date with the life of our church. We would also love to see you in one of our 5 locations for a service.